is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, radiating out to the darkest corners of Al Gore's internet from our secret broadcast bunker, cleverly disguised as a middle-class living room. This is Red Pill Politics.
Well, howdy there, patriots and big government taxpayers. Welcome your weekly dose of Red Pill Politics. I am your opinionated and abrasive host for the next 2 hours, and it is my succinct pleasure to be spending this Sunday with all y'all. February 16th, halfway through the month of February already. I'm praying for spring. I've seen enough of the winter stuff. We've had nothing but snow and ice here for the last few days. Pretty darn miserable. These people, I know a couple like this, and they're, I don't know, you'd think people would learn their lessons that live up here in the snow. That, you know, if you get 2 inches of snow and you drive on it and you pack it down to like a ½ inch of ice, you know, you might be able to get in and out of your driveway for the first couple of storms, but every time you run this stuff over and pack it down, the snowflakes turn into ice. And then it warms up and gets a little bit slushy, and you drive through it, and it leaves these ruts and grooves. All right? And they just slash your tires to pieces. And if you live on a slope of any type, you're destined to go off the side of the driveway or off the road. But people that think they're saving money, I used to plow snow a little bit myself, and you know, I finally got to the point I told people straight up, and I didn't care if they were friends or whatever. I said, if it snows more than about 2 inches, I'm coming and plowing. All right, and the reason for that, you know, a lot of homeowners will think that you're out there just trying to, you know, gouge them for all you can get, and that's just not true. Because what will happen is people will drive over what they can possibly drive over with their vehicles and create such a horrendous mess underneath that is so frozen, stuck to the ground, rutted up, and deep too. Don't forget, you're adding to it as you drive on it just because it's a frozen surface, and you get another 4 inches of snow that you can drive over. You know, the next time around, you got 6 inches of frozen ice and snow. This is a horrendous mess. And for all you people that think you're saving money on your plowing bill by doing this, and then they sit there all wide-eyed later wondering why it is they can't get people to call them back. When they call us, hey, I want my driveway plowed. I got to get out of here. Hey, I'll give you an extra $20 if you can get here in an hour. You know, will someone please call me? No one's going to call you if that's the way you're going to be. It's crazy. I've had enough of the winter. There's a lot of maniacs up here. You can tell the people that are transplants that come into the Northeast here for one reason or another, and they're spending their first winter here. They just don't know how to drive. They should not be driving. It is craziness. But anyways, spring is right around the corner. I won't have winter as an excuse for all of the jerks on the road. And I'm going to be ready to get something planted. I don't know if my garden's going to be huge this year, but I am going to plant a few things. And one of the things I often suggest that people do is if you're really limited on space, especially these urban preppers and people that live in cities, don't have the luxury of acreage in which to plant. So they're kind of stuck with container planting, which isn't bad. You can do a lot with it. But, you know, when space is a commodity, you got to get the most bang for your buck. So what is the most nutrient-dense things that you can grow in containers is the way you got to look at it. All right? And even people in the country who live in an apartment complex type of situation often have just a single patio or a deck and the inside of their home to grow things. So what's the most you can get? And that's where I often recommend to people is to create your own personal herbal garden, you know, to really evaluate yourself. Are you male, female, how old you are, what medical conditions you have, and what things can you work into your diet, what can you grow yourself that will, you know, it may not be bulk food, you know, like things that you would can and process and preserve, shells and shells of tomatoes or beans or whatever. It may not be quite like that. It may be very nutrient dense things that are specifically tailored to your health conditions. Because in a, you know, in a grid down or where there's civil unrest or something like that, in a situation like this, you know, you can't count on, and you should prepare for the fact that you may not have access to anything. All right, anything, even just to say, hey, I broke my finger, I need to go to my doctor and set my finger and maybe, you know, get a couple of pain pills or something. You know, it's not going to be like that. So what medications do you have that you're going to have to replace with something else? You know, have you got enough of your meds stored up, a surplus of them? Of those meds, which ones can you cut back 50% and still be safe, and which ones are critical that you take as prescribed? What foods offer, you know, a boosting effect or a supplement or an alternative to the medications that you're taking? All right, if you're taking medications, you know, for anti-inflammation, there's a lot of foods out there that are anti-inflammatory, and you should know what they are. If you're taking blood pressure medication but may not be able to go to the pharmacy and just re-up your blood pressure meds, you need to know what things to eat and what things not to eat. You know, there are things that will lower your blood pressure. And there are things that'll alter your blood pressure depending on whether it's day or night, whether you're at rest or at work. You know these things ahead of time and work them into your own little herb garden. Those nutrient-dense things specific to you, you know, and it really does help in a couple of ways. One, it gives you alternatives to things that are essential in your life. But, you know, it's kind of like tipping a domino over here. Once you get into it, you really get into it, and you educate yourself on a lot of things that can be of help to you from a preparedness point of view and from a health point of view. Because, you know, I'm a firm believer that our bodies do not really need much of anything that our bodies weren't born with. I don't think we need, you know, yellow number 5. I'm not sure that, you know, there's a whole lot of monosodium glutamate demand in infants or even adults. You know, is that something that we need? You know, in the better you eat and you train your immune system properly, not through, you know, false cues of vaccination. This is where I think vaccination isn't all it's cracked up to be. And it's too bad. It's got a really bad name right now, the concept and the idea of vaccinating us against some very, very bad things is attractive, but unfortunately, Big Pharma and their partners in government have corrupted this. All right, they really have. It's not about the people; it's about the money. All right, the moment they exempted themselves, almost anything, and this is just me. You do what you will. But if a big corporation or a government exempts themselves from liability or exempts themselves in any way from scrutiny and liability of any product or service, I will divest of that product or service. There's a reason for it. It's like coming right out and saying, you know, don't buy my widget, all right? It's a trap. And having that right out there as part of your advertising, you might as well. And the moment of pharmaceutical companies got themselves exempted from prosecution for damages, that's it. They're incentivized to only make a profit. Harming people does not matter. They do not want to be bothered with the squawking and the complaining of hurt, maimed, and killed individuals. They just want the money. And that's when they lost me as a customer. I will never do anything but recommend that people eat well and stay away from vaccines. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Let's take a look at my hit list. The call-in line is going to be open again this week. Let's get that up there right now. 512-248-8252. 512-248-8252. Let's see here. I want to spend some time on this because I harp about people getting active locally all the time. You know that. All politics is local. And I've connected a lot of dots, and I'm going to continue to connect some dots between the United Nations and the whole globalist Agenda 21, 2030 nonsense. I can and will, and you can do this too, connect all of those policies, bring them right into your town. Right into your town. And with what we're seeing from Lee Zeldin, the new director at the EPA, he just cut over 60 million worth of DEI stuff out of there. And more specifically, environmental justice. Yes, and you're reading some of these articles, it was a lot of environmental justice stuff that's being cut, which really was music to my ears. Music to my ears. We're going to be talking about that because I reminded you folks what your local counterpart to this is. All right, this is how the UN gets policies go right into the EPA. All right, their lobbyists all hang out together in D.C., and we're going to be talking about D.C. and what these lobbyists and political characters are searching for on Al Gore's interweb. You probably won't be surprised. But yeah, these guys here in the environmental justice field, that it's, again, a picture of pyramid style, all right, like Amway here. That's what a Soviet system is. And the apex councils dribble down policy onto those below. And it's really a top-down application of policy and law and control upon the people. And as it gets down close to you, what you're going to see, the familiar faces, your neighbors will be employed there, and your local colleges and universities will be connected, and your local nonprofits and land trusts will be connected, and your chamber of commerce, and every single board in your town hall or city hall, all right, has a counterpart, an equivalent floating around out there in Soviet space. Yeah, it does. And you're going to know them as your regional planning commissions. Now, I told you, I opened up mine. I did a search for private property rights. Now, you'd think a great big, huge, bloated organization like this, is putting out and pushing a land use plan for every single town in my state and yours too. Let's face it, they're everywhere, but they're well advanced here in Massachusetts. All right, they put out this arrogant plan for all of these towns. They haven't described to anyone really what gives them legal authority over their private property and their land anyways. That still is unanswered. But they come in and create all this policy based on what in the minor little connection I told you, the bottleneck here, and it's an essential part, and it's a weak spot in this whole system, is where they take their ideas all packaged up. They've done a whole bunch of propaganda to soften the targets, and then they advertise when they think the townspeople are ready. And by ready, I don't mean eager to attend the meeting necessarily and contribute and listen, but ready as in enough of them are asleep and probably just not even going to react. But of the ones that come out, we'll probably already have them on board and give them little titles and pat them on the back for their environmentalism and whatnot, and the vote will go our way. And they create what they call a consensus. It is a consensus of your town's community that we have a walkable and bikeable community. All right, that's the consensus. All right, when you took our survey, do you prefer to focus on greenways and green belts, traffic calming measures, environmental corridors, or open space? Okay, it's like, do you want to shoot yourself in the head or a gut shot? What if you don't want to necessarily shoot yourself? All right, is that an option? Is something else an option? It never is. You can't take their surveys, and you can't. And if you go to these visioning sessions, or soirettes, they call them now. But if you get in there and just go with the flow, they've already answered all the questions. They've got everything ready. They're just trying to get their bad idea to get you to think it's your good idea. And people vote this in. Now, when I go and I do a word search on my area's land use plan, it's called Valley Vision. Okay, all flowery language in the intro and all that to make you think they are such bleeding hearts and care so much for you and the environment. They're going to create a utopia with your cooperation. All right. Well, you could not find an instance of private property rights mentioned in that entire document, and it was a thick one too, folks. All right, not a mention. You would think that a entity whose whole reason for existing was to help you manage your private property, that they would at least allude to private property rights in some way. And they didn't. But what I did find was environmental justice areas, environmental justice corridors, social justice. Oh, yes, indeed. All of these make-believe creations, they're not found in law anywhere. These are terms that are created and trickle down through the whole system. So they start, like I said, you can track language from a woman who used to be the chair of the International Socialist Party. She was a prime minister of a socialist nation of Norway, and coined the term sustainable development. This term, coined by this woman, is now used widely across the board in your town, in your city and town. Sustainable development. So don't think when you hear that term, this is something cool that someone local just decided to use. No. It's been and is being defined, and the definition changes. The ground is always shifting under your feet. As I said before, I had a difficult time, and still it's a challenge to identify and say, exactly what do they mean? What is sustainable? What is sustainable development? And they can't really come out and say it. It's it seems obvious, but it's very difficult to define what is sustainable development. And the closest I was able to come was to be able to identify with what it is not. What are those things that are not sustainable? What are they telling us in their words are not sustainable and cannot be part of our future and part of the planning community anymore? And in that, and you've got to go look this up for yourself, it's called the Biodiversity Assessment Report. And in it, they flat out tell you and give you a list of those things that are unsustainable. All right, pastures, where the hooves of cattle artificially compact the soils. Work and home air conditioning. The consumption of meat. Consumerism. All right, all you people that think you're going to have that little yellow and orange, little 3-foot high little slide for your daughter to play, or the little blue swimming pool thing in your backyard. No, those types of things are not in your future. If you're going to be living in a 15-minute city and in your own little living cubicle, and you are, if you just go along with them, you are not going to be able to do that. What is everyone going to be able to have a little slide or a kiddie pool for their kid? That's not fair for you to have one and they can't. So you will be equal in misery. No, behave. Sit down. No kiddie pool for you. Yeah, isn't socialism great? Isn't socialism great? You strive for nothing. You don't have to worry about anything. All the decisions have been made for you. You'll eat what you're given. It's kind of like being a kid at the dinner table. All right, and that really is the only place where socialism actually is expected to exist, is at home and with God, where there is a provider, and then there is someone who is the consumer. Those that are given what they need to exist, but you got to exist under my rules. That's in the home, where you give your child everything they need. You feed them, you clothe them, and you tell them what to do. That's not the way it is when you're an adult in the world. Government is not supposed to treat you that way. And if you let the government be the nanny state, you get what you have. Get just what you have. Let's go through my entire hit list here, give you folks something to think about this morning. Rebuilding Gaza. When Trump came out with his comments early on, man, I said, what is going to happen? What is going to happen here? I don't know. I think, when he talked about, Gaza's just, it's a horrible place. I mean, it's all busted out. Who would want to live there? We'll just put them out, and, we'll build nice little resort communities in all the neighboring countries, and they're just going to have to absorb, the Palestinians, and we'll rebuild Gaza. He was playing 5D chess. Because I said, the world's going to go crazy about this. I don't know how this is going to go. I wasn't convinced that there wasn't going to be some serious backlash from his comments, and it turns out I think he was just playing the international community. But all of a sudden, there was a lot of people over there. All those neighboring countries got together in quite a hurry, too. Said, oh, you know what? We're all going to get together and make sure everything's okay. We've got a plan to rebuild in Gaza and get them back on their feet. And, they're taking control themselves, because I don't think they were pretty worried about what Trump was going to do. So I think the rebuilding of Gaza is not going to be a bunch of, Trump golf courses. I think you're going to see that it has more of a roots over there locally, but it was funny how that played out. And now, too, the USAID is under the microscope. This whole rebuilding of other nations going into the future is going to be way different, because let's face it, the CIA had this massive slush fund to push all kinds of foreign policy that was above board, and also black foreign policy, things that were not to be spoken of. This is how they're funded, and it's going to be broken up. It's going to be broken up. The American people are getting a glimpse in there now, and they do not like what they see. Just at the DEI and the cult, the gender cult stuff, that alone is stomach turning. But there's a lot more that we're talking about. Treasonous levels of funding going to things that do not support American interest. RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard have both been approved and gone forward. So looks like we've. I was surprised. I really thought that. I mean, they did go through quite a bit, but I thought they were going to go through more. I was, especially with Tulsi Gabbard, there seemed to be a real, a deep-seated hatred there from establishment Democrats. Man, they really do not like her at all, which is promising. I one of the positive things is, you can judge a person a little bit by their enemies. And one thing about these guys, both of them, RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, is they really do tick off the right people, don't they? Let's see what they do. Cut them loose, and everyone celebrate now. Don't forget, this is the time to double down our observations of these people, let them know that we're there, and the level of performance that we expect from them, and all of them, every single last one of them, even the locals. There's just been, since Trump came into office, a couple of pretty amazing things have happened naturally. Is a lot of people in government are just resigning and taking off. Let's see. There's only a couple statistics that I got here. But if you go and look, the articles are all over the internet. different departments where people are just bailing. 5,000 from NIH and CDC. Let's see. Some potential employees that were in line have just backed right out. Like 75,000 have accepted the Trump buyout offer. IRS agents is like 15,000 of them that have been targeted for removal. And I mean, that's all you see from one department after another, is they're bailing. Some of them just bailing on their own. Others that, they're waiting to see who's going to survive. But what we got to be on the lookout for, and this is where I tell you folks, man, this is where, think again. I've been harping on this for years, but imagine if you and a few of your buddies, over the time that I've had this show and you've been tuning in and listening, what if way back then you started getting a hold of some of your friends in town, filtering on to some of these boards, Conservation Commission, Board of Health, Planning Board, all right, all these various boards that deal with all the Soviet stuff that oozes in, all right, and now here you are, as Doge is at work looking for waste, trying to get rid of DEI stuff. Now, if you were just one person, even if you were that one no vote all this time, and trust me, you'll survive. It's okay. I was. For the longest time, I was the only no vote. And finally, people realized these things would come right around to bite them in the ass afterwards. And I would also be there to say, I told you so. All right? But be that only no vote. And then when it comes around like we have right now, where Doge is trying to sniff out and root out and defund DEI, and you got a bunch of little commies in your own town hall that are keeping their head low. This person that was in charge of your diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, they now call it something else. And all the same people, all the same actors with all the same policies are there, but they're just all hiding themselves like a turtle. They're pulling their head into the shell. All right. And they're hoping that this whole DEI sweep gets by. Don't let that happen. All right. If it would only take one person on the inside to recognize this, be able to audit and find, know the who's who in your town hall and move forward. Homan now is the borders are. Why should we be sitting on our hands? We should be making reports to the borders are. That's what we should be doing. Oh, God. All right, we'll be right back, folks. Those of you on YouTube, going to have to head over on Rumble. We're going to be shutting you off here after this first break. The rest of you, stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages left from the Red Pill Politics on Republic Broadcasting Network. Stay tuned.
Oh, they have robbed common men. They put their